We're beginning to storyboard some of our World War II Flying Tigers movie, and I'm going to be comparing a traditional versus AI versus hybrid approach. So which is going to turn out to be the best? Well, let's see. This is going to be an intense competition between a traditional approach to storyboarding and a modern AI one, with a hybrid approach thrown into the mix also. So stick around to the end to see which of those three approaches is our eventual winner. But before we get to that, why even storyboard? Should we storyboard at all? And what can we learn from the best? Well, there's an entire spectrum of opinions when it comes to storyboarding, with incredible filmmakers on both extremes of the argument. So let's pitch some of the greatest filmmakers in the against storyboarding category against some of the best filmmakers in the for storyboarding category and see if we can come out with some sort of a conclusion. First, here's Terrence Malick.
Well, I find it very hard to execute anything that is too preconceived or storyboards. I've never been able to work from a storyboard because it's hard. You always have a little bit the feeling you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and you let it see where it'll go on the day, and you hope it will go someplace and that you allowed it to happen. But if you try to make things happen, they start to feel presented. They start to feel as though they the action had been premeditated and was now being presented to you, which starts to make it feel like theater, which is wonderful in its own right. But in the movies, you don't want the movies to be like theater.
Other filmmakers on the extreme anti-storyboarding side of the argument include Werner Herzog.
I do not use a storyboard. I think it's an instrument of the cowards.
There's also people like Wong Kar-wai, who's talked about preferring an intuitive, almost jazz-like approach to his filmmaking. But other fantastic filmmakers swear by storyboarding, like Denis Villeneuve.
One of the fundamental moments of the film process for me, because it's a new way of writing. It's like a way to reapproach the reality of the screenplay and to create the most of the costumes. A lot of props are created in that process, and of course all the cinematic language of the movie, and it's a way to dream without any time pressure. It's just the perfect moment where it's the last step of where the dreams can still exist.
Also famously reliant on storyboards are the Coen brothers. And the director of Parasite, Bong Joon-ho. So that doesn't really help us. There are obviously incredible filmmakers on both sides of this argument. I have to say though, personally, I'm more persuaded by the anti-storyboarders. I think if you have the kind of luxury of time, budget, and probably most importantly, stakeholder trust that some of those filmmakers do, you can capture in that approach to filmmaking moments that I think would be impossible to plan. So what are we doing? Well, right now we're working on a pitch. Jim and I have a few pages of screenplay, we have an outline, but we don't have a fleshed out pitch deck. And part of what I'm doing with this storyboard is to try and illustrate how some of our ideas might look on the big screen. We have the film beginning in 1930s San Francisco with three impeccably dressed Chinese men breaking into a Chinese club that's in the spirits of places like the Forbidden City and the Chinese Skyrim of that time. So let's try AI first. I'll show you all three complete storyboards of about 30 seconds at the end of this video, but first let's compare a single frame. I want to show three Asian men in suits and hats bursting through large double doors as they enter the club in a kind of sketchy storyboard style. So here is Sea Dream. Here's Google's Imagen 4. Here's Flux 2 Max. And here is GPT 1.5 HQ. I think I can immediately dismiss Imagen 4 and Flux 2 Max. They're both inventing people I didn't ask for. And Worst of all, Flux seems to want our suited gentleman dancing. I'm not sure what that's about. Seedream, I would say, obviously is the most aesthetic, but there's a kind of danger here. I don't want the AI to start working on production design and cinematography for me. We'll use real designers and a cinematographer for that. So in a way, I prefer this sparser style of ChatGPT, which is what I prompted for. It's kind of conveying the action without offering opinions on anything that it hasn't been tasked with. But for this part of the experiment, I'm going to go with Seedream. Well, here's a great example of the kind of frustrations you have trying to complete a task like this with directly prompting AI. Multiple iterations of being more and more specific with your prompt, and it still is adding arrows, which I've explicitly told it not to do, alongside some kind of weird nonsensical framing. It's hard to understand the relationship between these three subjects in three-dimensional space. But we'll see more of that later. We'll compare 30-second animatic storyboards across the three approaches and see which one comes out best. The next option is hand drawing them yourself, and so that's what I'm working on here. Of course, the absolute gold standard is to use a professional storyboard artist. In my opinion, that's not going to change ever. AI will not replace those kind of artists at the very top level. But for that quality of storyboard artist with actual experience in the industry, here in the UK, you're looking at a minimum of something like £500 and up from there per day for that kind of quality. And that's a very fair price. They're excellent at what they do. But for a production like ours, very early on in the project, just thinking about ideas is not currently tenable. We've got no budget for that. So I have to do it myself. I am not an artist. If I'm really slow, I can make something that looks okay, not too bad, but it just takes me a long time because I'm not a real artist. I don't draw every day. So I think something like this looks pretty cool. It looks kind of acceptable, but every single frame like this, what it takes me 20, 25, maybe even 30 minutes to draw this. And so if you're looking at something like 800 shots in a movie, what's that? Well, I did the maths here. It would take 270 plus hours working full time, and that's time that I don't have. So on these ones, I've been working really fast. It just takes me a minute or so to draw out the panel that I'm wanting to draw, and this is what you get. It's exactly the framing I have in my head. There are no details I didn't ask for, but I think personally it's maybe off-puttingly crude or unclear. Lots of people wouldn't really understand what's going on the page here. So we'll compare this approach with the two other approaches in a head-to-head at the end of this video, so stick around for that. Lastly, we're going to be doing a hybrid approach. In the hybrid approach, I take photographs of the boards that I've already drawn, and I'm using those as part of my prompt for GPT. That way I can both show and tell the AI exactly what I'm looking for. Here's what we get for a couple of those shorts. I'll put the whole prompt that I use in a link on our YouTube. So there you have it, 3 different approaches, and now we're going to put them head to head and you can see what you think. So there you go. What did you think? My preference is for the hybrid approach. The pure AI approach, I feel, doesn't actually communicate what I had in mind as a director. It's a little bit like I've got a rogue DP or a rogue designer going off with their own ideas and completely ignoring much of what I tell them to do. My own drawings, in my opinion, are too crude and potentially confusing. And given my speed and skill set, I don't have the time to deliver better options. So for now, I'm using hybrid. But which of the 3 approaches would you choose? Let us know in the comments below.